Hey folks, this is Ben Yessel. How's it going? It's pretty late after Thanksgiving. I had a good Thanksgiving with my brother and his family, and you know, uh, yeah, I still need to spend a lot more time with my family, and just yeah. I mean, it was anyway. I've been thinking a bit, of course, today about um, well, it's another kind of approach to the bigger questions in life, I suppose, but it's having something to do with how do you know that something is worth doing or not worth doing um, from a moral standpoint? Um, and how do you make sense of church or what church or why the churches exist? And it's, is, is it like they're all okay, or is it? So it's kind of what I'm talking about here addresses all this stuff, but on some level, but um, it's kind. I'm going to mention some things that I know that have to do with the nature of the beast here, um, that being life. So right off the bat, um, the most important thing that we have in our own selves that lets us know that something is true or not is called our conscience. It's your conscience, also called in my religion the light of Christ. Our conscience tells us when something is good or bad. We'll know if something is good if we feel good when we do it. We know something is bad by if we feel bad. And it's a feeling that we experience. And it can be impressions to the mind as well. But it's a feeling. So I'm going to keep coming back to this one topic because there's other things that can help us be more sure about things that are spiritually true via the Holy Ghost and things. But the conscience is the basic. No matter what, you can have this. And how can you can the conscience become weaker because of someone's choices? Yes, it can. If you ignore your conscience when you do things that are wrong repeatedly over time, you can dull your conscience. And so when your conscience is dulled, it's harder to know when something's bad because you've dulled it already. It's something that isn't always you don't always have it precisely the same spiritual strength. And this is the core of what we're talking about. Everything else rests on this. And if you don't believe this is true, if you don't believe you have consciences or something else, or if you think it's all psychological, something in the mind, okay, that's something else you can believe. But everything else that you every other way every other meaningful way we could know something is true spiritually rests on um, being aware of something called the conscience in ourselves. Um, it's also called the divine spark. Do animals know when if something is right or wrong? No, but animals will sense good versus evil. They'll feel it, but they don't understand good versus evil in the same way that humans do. Humans know it's wrong to just go up and cold-bloodedly kill someone that you don't even know had no, just randomly go up with a gun and boom, blast it off. We know that that's wrong. It's one of the most obviously wrong things you can do. Um, you don't know the person and just boom. Um, so so knowing this and if you the only way to go on to the next stuff to talk about is knowing that we all have a conscience that can be strengthened or weakened depending on our choices. So, and I'll probably make other videos about the subject, but I was just watching Angry Video Game Nerds Bible. He has some videos where he kind of goes into Bible video games that were made for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System or whatever. And they're funny, and they're a little off color, just a little bit. Not really. It's just James Rolfe being himself and swearing a little bit, and he drinks and whatever. Just agree with it all you want, and whatever, that's fine. But the idea of a Bible video game is very interesting because there are a number of things about church and about living a principled life in a especially Christian standpoint, but also some other religions. But attending church and reading scriptures and praying and all this stuff and observing the commandments and all this stuff, keeping the commandments. These are all things that we are familiar with as Christians, or we should be, and it starts to become more meaningless and not as meaningful. These sorts of things when if I don't know, how can I put this? I think it has something to do with in life. There are many, 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 many things that are very enjoyable to pursue: fun, uplifting, exciting, meaningful, gives meaning to life. We live the full life by doing various kinds of things. And a lot of these things that are really we want to do, there are some things that I think are both really fun to do and will strengthen our spirits, make us better people. Some things are just fun without really being strengthening. Some things are fun and also spiritually weakening, or make us more evil, actually, more callous, less righteous. And it's just that with the things regarding all things when we're talking about again, for just especially a Christian standpoint, those things that involve living a principled life, a righteous life. These things there's some things that just can become very meaningless or less meaningful, depending on how things are in our lives, and a lot of factors and things. If we go to church, and first we could ask the question: what's the purpose of going to church? What's the reason you go to church? So there are reasons, that to me can help someone become stronger spiritually. But that's the main reason, is you want to become stronger spiritually. You want to be more prepared to live in heaven by going to church. And so the question becomes, what kind of church? What is it about church that makes us better people? Is it just going to church that makes us better people? No, we know that's not true. So a lot of these questions you guys have already answered for yourselves. It's just that I would suggest that since we don't know everything, as I mentioned in another video, none of us know everything. We should be open to the possibility that maybe we don't know everything. We don't know everything in this regard. Maybe we don't have all the answers. And if we do we feel we have all the answers in some area, we might not have all the answers in some other area that we just haven't, So and it's also a question of how do you know something is true. It always goes back to reasoning things out in your mind, but also it needs to feel right. It needs to feel right. and like something that would bring you joy or peace of mind, clarification. I would suggest that, there's always the, right versus wrong churches and those other trains of thought. If you go to church and what is being taught does not feel right, or you don't agree with the doctrine, and it bothers you, that might be an indication that it's probably not the right place to go, but it's not a guarantee necessarily. It's a question of the nature of your feelings about what is being said and also what is being said. And of course, but um, if you notice that, well, you can see how money influences this arena. If a pastor wants to have more money and he needs to have a bigger congregation, that gives him money, and they need to give him more money. And how can he do that? Well, he can make the doctrine of whatever his church, whatever he teaches, more pleasing to everybody, and not as hard to live. So then he'll get more money from people that want to go to hear him talk about whatever, and people that go to that church will feel more righteous for having gone to church. So what's really going on here? But there's so many things that you could just not agree with regard to different churches, and that's okay. That's what our own choices and things. But there are many things that people observe about various churches that actually are indications that maybe it's best not to go to that church. Not just maybe, you shouldn't. But there are a lot of, it just depends on the nature of your thoughts. There's so many ways you could think about this stuff. And at some point, if it bothers a person enough, if it's something that the person is really adamant about enough, they'll pray to God and ask for clarification about this stuff. And they'll figure it out. If a person is adamant about something enough, if they just, like, I've had enough, and they put their foot down, and they're like, I'm gonna just do what I think is right. Boom. Sometimes we need to have more. I don't know. Everybody's different that way, and some people kind of just go with the flow their whole lives, and then they get to a point. I don't know if they ever get to a point where they're like, "Yo, I'm not gonna put up with this," or they're gonna say, "Oh, you know what? I should understand this better. I feel like this is true, but I've always just trusted other people. I want to find this out for myself." It all comes back to what's going on in our own souls and spirits. There are things that strengthen our souls and spirits and things that weaken it. We need to remember not to offend our conscience, and we need to try to welcome in any good spirits and resist the bad. And if a person has spiritually weakened enough, it's easier for evil spirits to have more influence in that person, and it becomes harder to know what's spiritually true. And the only way you can know what something is spiritually true is not only by your own thoughts, but again by your feelings about things. Yeah, you hear the term ennoblement or refinement. You can think of something that's refined as being very sophisticated or beautiful, or maybe upper class somewhat. This just kind of has some British connotations or connotations from Europe with that in mind. But really, something that's refined or nobling is something that is uplifting morally and is clean, wholesome, and in good taste and all this kind of thing. yeah, it can be easy also to do things that are tedious that we talk about. We tend to think about in terms of religious sorts of activities, but things that are kind of tedious and not very enjoyable by themselves. And if we do them, we think, oh man, this was just not fun, and I did it, and therefore, man, I am, yeah, I'm going to heaven. I am doing good stuff, and yeah, if you can pay attention to what's being taught and really kind of be honest with yourself about what's being taught, and you can really internalize it and try to live it the week, and in church, you know, if you take it very seriously, yeah, I think that will do you a lot of good. Um, but there's a lot more things than just that involving living a righteous life. And, it's like you have to really be um, about living a good, honorable life all the time, right? And, there's a lot of things about life that can be very discouraging and hard to go through. Whether or not, I mean, you ought to go to church, but only go to church if you feel like, um, well, first you want to, how can I put this? You want to go to church because you want to live with God again, ultimately. And so that the church is a means, it's one of many means to do that. It's a good idea to go to church because you are probably going to meet more people that are, trying to live good lives as well. And they probably believe similar things. And you could be a member of one church and you can visit another church. That's okay. You don't have to be a member of a church to visit that church. In my estimation, at least as going from one Christian church to another or whatever. But the problem again is just thinking in terms of this activity will help me live with God again, or this activity will make me heavenly. But this activity is not as noteworthy, from a religious standpoint. That's not the case at all. If we really want to be honest with ourselves, where we stand, there's tens or hundreds of thousands, not millions, of decisions and thoughts and activities that we have done every single day in our lives after the age of 8, that, especially after the age of 8, but there are things that maybe we've experienced that weren't our own, just desires to do good or evil before the age of 8. There's some things that maybe we just experienced that may also still have a positive or often sometimes a negative effect on our lives. So, but there are so many things. There are countless things that influence our not just spiritual strength or spiritual purity or righteousness, but also our overall happiness and psychological well-being and state of mind. A lot of times, a sense of reality, a sense of or outlook on what is real, and just all kinds of stuff that influence who we are as people. Not only just our personalities, but what's our out? How do things look? So there. Last thing on this video, and let me know if you guys want to hear more stuff about this kind of thing. So in my life, I've known many different kinds of people, and you do notice when somebody's being a little bit fake regarding trying to be a good person. But there's there's many different ways of being fake or less sincere about being a good person, and or whatever. So a lot of people say that you should just be a good person without going to church and whatever else. And yeah, I understand that whole thing. But we have to assume that we don't know everything. That we maybe believe things that maybe aren't necessarily always true about the nature of things that are spiritual. And a good and evil in our own lives and others. If we can always say to ourselves, there are still things I don't fully understand about the spiritual world, about our own spirits, about whatever. Something, if we can always say that, then we can be honest with ourselves and say, even if I believe all these things, I know these things, or I feel these things are true, I don't have 100% knowledge of all this stuff yet. Not all things are made known to me, right? These are kind of religious ways of saying things. Yeah, so, I mean, like, I have my own beliefs regarding what church is true, of course. But I also will say that you want to, in general, try to associate with people that help you feel better in life. And you can feel like you're friends with them, and you feel just better about life. That's what you want as part of a church that you go to. And when that doesn't happen, it's really easy for people not to go to the church. You also go to church because I assume you believe what the churches teaches that what people believe that go to that church. I would assume that's a huge part of that. And if you have doctrinal disagreements with that church, you probably want to look for a different church. But the doctrines that you live, or church teachings that you live and believe, if any person is really sincere about, again, wanting to be a good person and wanting to go with God again and their families, whatever, all that kind of stuff, sooner or later, the truth of what church to go to at some point it will be made known, if not in this life, in the next. So the idea is, again, go to the church that you think you should go to, and if you get to a point where you're not happy or not satisfied with that church, try a different one, try a different one, try a different one. But if nothing ever feels completely right, I would say, take that seriously. Take that stuff seriously. It's not something you should just brush off or ignore. But, it's just that it takes a lot of guts, to sometimes go a completely different direction, and you can make mistakes. People make mistakes. Sometimes when you go a different direction, you end up at some point realizing, oh, that was actually not what I should have done. But the only way you can really know if something is true, again, spiritually, is if your conscience is strong, if you're living a righteous life, trying to live an upright life, right? Trying to do good things with your time, but you keep your conscience strong by resisting evil, trying to do what's good, and you try to invite good spirits into your life that way. And also, I believe that, in my church, so you can have the gift of the Holy Ghost with you, which is an additional strength on top of having a good conscience. And when you keep your conscience healthy and strong by doing what's right, it will be easier to know what your relationship to these different churches are and to different people. Personally, I think that there should be a lot more interfaith getting to know you kinds of things, because um, we're often talking about people that are just very similar. Not always, but there's a lot of people that would really benefit from this sort of thing. Churches are too isolated, and it's not right, in my opinion, to have pastors competing for people. It's not right to have it be a financial thing. It, of all endeavors in regard to making money on something, being a pastor is one of those things where um, there are um, things about making money and being a pastor. Those two things combined, there are things about that whole thing that make well, it doesn't always help people find spiritual truth. I'll put it that way. Um, there's many other things that people can do and make money in, regarding, in of course with careers that still involve truth, but not the sort of truth necessarily that will be especially spiritually um, influential one way or another. Um, so, or heaven or hell kind of thing, good and evil. But that's how vast majority of Christian churches operate. Is they have people that are paid to lead, you know, lead congregations, hear confessions, preach sermons, and all this stuff. And they need musicians as well, and that's how they most of them operate. But we're talking about spiritual truth. You can see, I think, where I'm going here a little bit with this sort of thing. It's like businesses. How do businesses operate? Businesses operate. Some are more ethical, some are less ethical, but there's always a little bit of the, competition, right? That you supposedly would create better products that are cheaper and all this stuff. But there are many things, what I do with music, like music instruction, is it has some spiritual elements to it, but it's still ultimately not heaven and hell. Ultimately, it's more than that. Although we often kind of have that emotional, spiritual connection in music with, yeah. So, but that's why sometimes there are issues with the way that music instruction often is, because music can be influenced by there's a moral there's a moral or spiritual dimension to music, of course. And there's, when you're teaching students, there's a lot going on, not only intellectually and artistically, musically, and auditorily and physically, technically, and all this stuff. But there's also some spiritual stuff going on too, emotional growth and all this stuff. We're not always, we can observe many things, but we're not always fully aware of what's going on. And again, all this should be food for thought for you guys. If you think I have a dog in the fight, I don't, say I do believe in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but it's not for me to say, you must do this or that. It is much more along the lines of if we want to fix something in our lives, or we really want to know something really, really bad, there's a way to do that. It won't be easy, but there's always a way. And we just need to keep trying to be good people and lead good lives and not be insincere Christians or insincere Mormons or whatever. Yeah, and there is a spiritual warfare going on, even if we're not aware of it. We're less aware of it. We're kind of aware of it, kind of feel it sometimes. We'll watch YouTube videos, and some of them give us the heebie-jeebies, or we just kind of feel weird about stuff. All this kind of stuff can be indicators to us that there is a real spiritual battle going on still, not only for our own selves, but for in a general sense. So, you guys leave me thoughts and comments below. I'll be considerate of all your guys' religions and when I answer any questions and all that stuff. So don't worry about me trying to force my beliefs on you. It's not like that at all. It's all about good, conscience, doing what's right, and strengthen your conscience so you can recognize when things are true or not. All right, I'll catch you guys later. Take care.